measuring when we use a thermometer? What are we measuring when we use a thermometer? Are we measuring length, height? What are we measuring? Ellis? Temperature. So on the front cover, you should have written that we use a thermometer to measure temperature. What is our unit that we use when we're measuring temperature? Your body is 98 what, Melanie? Degrees. And you're used to degrees Fahrenheit, okay? But in metrics, they use degrees Celsius. And this is how you can abbreviate it. That little circle goes up toward the top, and then you put a C, degrees Celsius. Just to give you an idea, in the United States, if it gets to be 32 degrees, we call that freezing. Why? Does anyone know why that's called freezing? 32 degrees, Lexi?
Because
that's when water will freeze. So if it rains, it's either going to be snow or ice. Okay, it's not going to be water. 33 degrees, if it rains, it's water. 32 degrees, if it rains, it's snow or ice. In Celsius, it will freeze at 0 degrees. Okay, so 0 degrees Celsius is freezing, 32 degrees Fahrenheit is freezing. In Fahrenheit, at 212 degrees, water will boil. If you have a pot of water on the stove, when it reaches 212 degrees, it will boil. In Celsius, it only has to reach 100 degrees to boil. Okay, so that gives you, so Fahrenheit temperatures are not as hot as Celsius temperatures, right? Because you have to get to 32 degrees to freeze in Fahrenheit, and you only have to get to 0 to freeze in Celsius, right? Okay, so looking at this thermometer, I just showed you, it looks a lot like a graduated cylinder because it has the scale up the side. And then this is a actual thermometer, and that red is actually a tiny bit of liquid. So like a graduated cylinder, it does hold a little bit of liquid. The first thing that we always want to do when we're measuring with any kind of scale, the numbers that go up the side, is determine what is this interval? What are they counting by? What are each of these lines worth? So if this one is 0 degrees and this one is 10 degrees, each one of these little lines is worth what, Vinny? 2 degrees. So when you're reading a thermometer and you go up and here's 80, how do we count up? What does that measure at? What do you think that is? If this is 80, what is that line going to? We can zoom in a little bit maybe. Lexi? I think it's 85 as well. Don't forget it. You have to put the 85, and then you can't forget your label, degrees Celsius. What about this one? What is this thermometer reading? What do we have here on this thermometer? Why do I only have 3 hands up? Sophie, what do you think it is? Each one of the little lines is worth 2. So here's 0. What is that one going to? What do you think? Melanie, what do you think? I think it's closer to 6. I think if I really zoom in on that line, it's stopping at 246 degrees Celsius. So that does bring me to a good point. On most measurements, if I take a grade, I will give you 1 degree either way, or 1 unit either way. So I would have accepted 5, 6, or 7 here. Okay, what about this one? What do you think this one's going to? Connor?
80.
I agree. It's right there on that 80. Don't forget, you need it to say degrees Celsius. And I would accept 79, 80, or 81. Yes, ma'am. Oh, you want to look at the next one already? Okay, what do you think it is, Lexi? 48 what? Degrees Celsius. And you cannot just put degrees. You have to put the C. Okay. What about number 5? Charlize, what do you think number 5's at? This is 50, and each little line is worth 2. So what's it hitting at? Where's your packet? It should be in your blue folder. I would accept that. I was going to say 56 degrees Celsius, so I would accept 55, 56, or 57. Okay. On your next page, we'll go back to this, and I'll have you finish that in a moment. But I'm going to give you guys a thermometer, and we're going to measure the temperature of the room, the temperature of hot water, the temperature of cold water, and the temperature right above a lamp that I'm going to plug in. Okay? And we'll compare those temperatures. I will tell you that these thermometers are not 100% accurate. They're old, they've been dropped. But if you look at this thermometer, you will notice a couple of things. Number 1, on the left is degrees Fahrenheit, and on the right is degrees Celsius. Which one are we going to use, the left or the right? Penelope. Right, we're measuring in metrics, which will be degrees Celsius. Now, what is this thermometer counting by? Look at it. If this is 50 and that is 60, what does this halfway mark represent? The one that comes out a little bit farther. Nolan? 55. So each one of the little lines is what? Each one of the little lines is what, Jacob? 1. So this thermometer is not counting by 2. So you have to be very careful every time and measure make sure you know what the scale is. Okay? Now, let's look at this one. I don't know how well we can see it. But what does it look like is the temperature of the room here? Remember, we're using the scale on the right. What does that look like? You can see that little red line right there. So that's something we need to talk about. Should we measure to the top of that red broken line or to where it breaks off? What do you think? Let's look at one that's not got a broken line. Okay, what do you think that's measuring at? This is the temperature of the room. What do you think it is? Gage? 20 degrees Celsius. Now, that makes sense because look at what the Fahrenheit measurement is. 70. That's probably about right. It's probably about 70 degrees in here. But it's only 20 degrees Celsius. Okay? So, I'm going to pass out the thermometers. I'm going to get the hot and cold water out in the lamp, and we're going to measure. Remember, when we measure, every person has to be looking at the temperature and making sure they agree. Yes, Gage?
Don't they put these in like holes?
Uh-huh. You see how warm your water is? Yep.
Do we have a thermostat in this room?
Uh-huh. Okay, any other questions about measuring with the thermometer? Okay.